introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway because he deserves it and he's earned it. Eric Schurr has been competing in speech contests since 2007. And out of his 7 trips to the district level, he's placed in the top 2 6 of those times, including winning the humorous, the table topics, and the international contest in 2015 when he competed in the semifinals of the World Championship of Public Speaking. And today, he's here to join us to share with us some of the most effective techniques that he's learned along the way. So presenting his workshop, Level Up Your Speech, join me in welcoming Mr. Eric Schurr.
Thank you so much, Peter. You treat me so much better than I deserve. And thank you, everybody, for having me. I'm going to try and be as polished as I can for you today. But just so you know, I just got in the house from a flight back from Colorado. So I am decompressing as well. So I'm in the mood to get comfortable. So I want you to get comfortable. Lean back. Let's have some fun. What I hope you walk away with, what I am about to give right now, the workshop for how to level up your speech, it's not just for contest speeches. If you're giving an inspirational speech, I want your audience feeling like you changed their life. If you're building your content as a product, I want you ready to package it, maybe even sell it. But if you are looking to compete, I want you to help you fill up your bookshelf with all kinds of trophies. So regardless of what you want to do, let's get into it. So there's not much I can cover. I can't cover everything in 45 minutes or less. So I decided to focus on the 2 best ways that you can improve your speech. Number 1, part 1, is making sure your message is crystal clear. And then number 2, whatever that message is, make your audience feel it. So I'm going to be giving a part 1 and a part 2, but just to make sure we have some fun, I'm going to be putting a breakout activity in between. We'll do some breakout rooms if we can and give you some time to practice. So is everybody ready to roll forward with part 1? And the crowd goes mild. All right, I got a thumbs up all over the place. So let me share screen 2 and we'll get into it. All right, friends, give me some, wait, nope, haven't hit the share button yet. It's the tech. All right, my friends, give me a shout if you can see my screen. All right, all right, fantastic. But here's what I'm gonna do. I don't like giving high-level speeches, so I'm gonna go ground level. So ground level that the first couple things I tell you to do, probably gonna seem extremely basic, but I will tell you why I am showing them to you. Level up your speech, part 1. So the first thing, let's set the table. The first thing, I'm hoping you've all done this already, but make sure you write your speech out word for word. Write that script. I think everyone does this already, but honestly, there were a lot of years where I didn't. Before I started competing, I was born with the gift of gab. As a comedian, I have instant opinion on everything. So you put me in a room, I will talk your ear off. So I used to put speeches together saying, you know what, I don't need to write it out word for word. It just makes me rigid. I just want an outline and that's it. And what I learned immediately when competing in contests is it makes it almost impossible to polish your material when you are speaking off the cuff. You will see through the tips and what I tell you, what I walk you through in the next few screens, we are going to analyze our script, our speech, word for word. So please, if you're like me and think you can get away with not having that script, please write your speech out word for word. Now, here's what some might not be doing, which is once you've written your speech out word for word, give every statement its own line. Why? Because nobody in this room, when they're giving a speech, wants it to sound like they're reading a newspaper article. But we're setting ourselves up for that when we type up our speech like a newspaper article. Here's why. Lots of people on this meeting have kids. You know, some are caretakers for people other than kids. And I'm guessing a lot of us don't get a lot of time to ourselves by ourselves, which means the way we practice our speech is by reading it from a piece of paper while a bunch of other things are going on. And there's nothing wrong with that. Practice your speech any way you can. But there is the risk of developing bad habits. Why? Because when you're reading it, you're not practicing your rhythm. You're not practicing your pauses. And those are huge. So what I want you to do is give every statement, like right here on the left, my heart was pounding. I was sweating. I was short of breath. Even if you've never heard my speech, never read my speech before, just by reading it, use that white space to work up that visual memory as far as when you are going to pause. Okay, so again, break your speech out line by line. I had some more material. Now, notice that I didn't say sentence by sentence, statement by statement. If when you are delivering your speech, you want to break something up like that, like I say, statement by statement, each one of those words would get its own line. Again, it's just another example of how to use that white space for your visual memory. Even if you're reading it off a piece of paper, you are creating the habits of those rhythms, those pauses. Because here's the secret, folks. Do you know what comes out? You prepare, you study tips from world champions, and you walk into your contest, and you know what comes out in the contest? Habits. 85% habits, 15% what you think of at the time. Build habits. Okay, so we've written our speech. Every statement has its own line. We've set the table. It's time to eat. What do you want your audience to eat? Take this moment to think about what is your message. If you could break down your message, if you could sum up your message in one sentence, what would that sentence be? If you need 2 to 3 sentences to sum up your message, you might have multiple messages hiding in there. Not a big deal if you're at the lower levels, but the higher you get in the competition, keep on refining your message so that it's very simple, very straightforward. You can say it in one sentence. It's very important to know what your message is. Why? Because knowing what your message is going to allow you to clean up a lot of the waste that's in your speech. Speaking of waste, now, when I talk about waste in a speech, what are the 2 biggest things that I have seen that take up space in your speech? Number 1 is additional details, okay? Giving the crowd details that they just downright don't need. The other is noise words. So let's talk about those details. Now get that sentence count down, okay? Think about, as you read through your speech, line by line, think about, do I really need to tell them that? If you're telling a story, you tell them it was 7:30 in the morning. That's way too specific. Unless there's some particular reason they need to know it's 7:30, they don't need specific information like that. She was my brother's girlfriend's cousin. Okay, Rocky, now you're getting ridiculous. Okay, obviously nobody's going to put that in their speech. However, what I have seen people do and have done myself many, many times is a squeeze in information about how we know someone to try and strengthen that bond, our audience's bond with that character. We do that as a way to saying, okay, this character is giving us advice. We know them so well that we really should take that advice. And the myth there is you're turning it into a speech about that character. The speech is not about that character. It's about your message. So again, look for ways that maybe you are describing your relationship with someone too much. As long as they know that you know them and they walk away with that message, they know enough. All right, here's one that I get yelled at for. I am very passionate about this subject. People don't like pulling this one back. You want to know why? Because it seems like a power move. It's a power move. Because it's a truth. We all want people to know that we are passionate about the subject that we are talking about. But this line is high risk and low reward. The reason why it's high risk is because if you're telling me a story and you say, oh, 7:30 in the morning, and I say, no, it's not. That place doesn't open until 8:30. It's forgivable. I still love your story. I still love your point. If you tell me I'm very passionate about this subject and I don't believe that, well, now I'm not listening to any other thing that you say. But that's not the biggest reason to tell people you are passionate, because passion is an emotion. And when it comes to emotion, don't tell them, show them. Here's the thing about emotions, and I'll get to, no, I was about to give away stuff from part 2. Let me just end on that line. When it comes to emotion, don't tell them, show them. So again, get that sentence down. That's our first angle that we're going to take to really getting those unnecessary details out of our speech. Next, get that word count down. There is a link. You'll probably, if you Google how to win world championship of public speaking, it's one of the first results, but I'll send you the link anyways. They did a study of, for the past, I don't know, 5 years, 15 years, 20 years, as far as all the world championship speakers. And what they found was that the one who won the championships or placed in the top, second or third, they had an average of 110 words per minute. So let's do some loose math here. If we're shooting for 7 minutes as our comfort zone, and we want to have a good pace, we're talking about 770 words per speech. Now, everybody has different styles, but if your word count is higher than that, it may very well mean that you are rushing things that need to be slowed down. Let's talk about that emotion again that Jim Emery brought up, and we talked about a little bit. There are certain emotional parts of your speech that you want to give plenty of space so that people can feel it. So get that word count down. And a way to do that, there's a lot of noise words in there. I'll give you an example here. I didn't understand. I needed some more details. The very first thing I spot is that I needed some more details implies that you didn't understand. So we can shorten that down to I needed more details. And here's a way you can even take away a syllable. When you're telling stories, tell the story in the present tense. Just because it's happened in the past doesn't necessarily mean you have to tell it that way. Tell your stories in the present tense so that your audience feels in the moment, and you can shave off a word or a syllable here because you don't need to say I needed more details. You could say I need more details. So again, shorter to say, and remember this, folks, no matter what we say here, less to remember, less to forget. It's a win-win situation. Less to remember, less to forget. Okay, get that word count down. Next, get that syllable count down. Come on now, Rocky. Really, doesn't this seem like overkill? Do we really have to get this involved? I don't like saying stuff like this, but yeah, we kind of do. And here's why. Every single one of us in our life have sent an email or a letter. You might do it right after this meeting, and you start using big fancy words that just you don't use in normal day life, especially us in corporate America. We say dumb things like implement a solution when we could just say fix it. So get that syllable count down. Here's the bigger reason to do that. Every syllable kills a chance for a pause. We talk about pauses very highly in Toastmasters, and there's a good reason for that. Pauses are critical to your speech. They give your audience's brain a time to digest what you just said. It helps the emotion of what you just said really start to grow. And not only are you giving your stuff more stuff to trip over by having multiple syllable words, you are taking away that chance to do that pause so that people can really think and digest what it is you're saying. So yes, if you find you're using big words in your speech, look for shorter words to say it, because if you look at the speeches that have won the World Championship of Public Speaking or even close, they are getting a lot more conversational than they used to be. So stay away from big fancy words, short and effective. That way you can get that syllable count down. All right, what do we have next? All right, so let me do an aside for a second here. So now we've done some things to get our speech down. So, okay, does that mean that now, okay, we have a great word count, we've cleaned it all up. Does that mean we have a winning speech? No, not quite yet. What it does mean is that we have a much cleaner speech. every single word in our speech we've looked at and made a conscious decision. Does this sentence, does this word, does this syllable, does this content support my message? And if it doesn't, out you go. But that's part A. Part B is any new stuff that you add, because again, we don't judge just based on lowest word count. Anything that you add to the speech from now on, you are now very much conscious of, does this add to my message? Does this support my message? How does this work in my speech? So rather than just brain dump free writing your speech out, you are just constantly thinking through and refining what you have and what you don't have. Okay, so what is our next step? Now you should deliver and get feedback. No matter how good we think our speech is, if we haven't delivered it to an audience, we don't know. Deliver your speech and get their feedback. Feedback is critical, knowing to what needs to be improved about your speech. Future and current contestants, know this. You are not just up against your fellow contestants. You are up against them and every person that has given them feedback. So again, don't put yourself in a situation where it's you against the world. Deliver that speech. Get that feedback. Make sure to ask your audience what they felt the message of the speech was. Some may have seen the focused feedback forms that I send out after I give my speeches, and that's the very first question. What was the message of the speech? That I find that hugely important, because if they come back with the message was this, and I'm like, I meant to say that, well, now I know I have refinement to do. So again, ask them what they felt the message of the speech was. And don't forget, your feedback matters too. When you're giving that speech, there are lots of things that we write down or we have going on in our head, and it sounds great. But we get up in front of a crowd and then it just rolls out. It's awkward. It doesn't feel right. So your feedback matters too. Make sure you take note of what felt right, what felt awkward. Deliver your speech as many times as you can and get that feedback, because again, no matter how good you, I, everybody think our speech is, if we haven't delivered it and gotten that feedback, we don't really know. And I'm just whipping through this, I think. So fantastic. All right. Then last part of part 1. Lather, rinse, and repeat. Eric, what the heck are you talking about? I want you to go back to step 2. Now that you've done all that cleanup, you've delivered your speech, you've gotten your feedback. What is your message? Oh, hang on. Let me go previous. Don't look at that. You got a sneak peek. All right. What is your message? The more you give your speech, the more you read through your speech, you may realize one of two things. Either your speech isn't really stacking up to what you want your message to be, and or what you really want to convey, the message you really want to put across, is different than what you thought your message was when I asked you to put together that one-liner. So go back, think, what is your message? Then review your speech again, word for word, making sure everything supports it. Is your speech organized the right way? Reanalyze it. Get that sentence, word, syllable count down. Again, yes, again. You will be amazed. We're like a running river, folks. We're never the same people any given moment. Yeah, I could look at something today and spot a bunch of stuff I can clean up. The very next day, I will spot some things I missed. So again and again, look over your speech to see if there's anything that doesn't need to be there. And then deliver and get feedback. How many times do you have to go back to step 2 and go through every single step? As many times as you could possibly afford. Because the big lesson here is polish, which is what we're all shooting for, which is what wins customers and contests and inspiration. That polish isn't in the writing. That polish is in the revision. So the more that you do, the more that you revise, the better it's going to get. You like my little unknown there, because I don't know who actually said that. So, all right. let me stop for questions. I ran through a lot there, and it feels like I went through that rather quickly. Are there any questions before I move on to our fun activity?
A question.
Yeah.
So this is beautiful. So does this same thing work when we are creating an evaluation, even though it's done in a very, very short period of time? Is this the same format you'd use in doing evaluations?
You can. I would actually talk the same way about the evaluation contest that I just talked about earlier about the table topics contest. They get a speech. If you read the judging form, it asks for a summary. That sounds a lot like a conclusion. So here's a very generic formula that you can use so that you can use some of these techniques is thank them, thank the Toastmaster, then give them a high level thing of where you want to see them take that speech. Oh, I don't know, very engaging, but I want to make sure it reaches every single person in the room. To do that, then list off, your 3 to 5 top things that you spot about your speech. Saw this, why, do this, why, do this, why, and then close it up with your conclusion, wrapping it up and then thanking everybody and off you go. So again, if you walk in there with a very blah blah ABC formula like that, yeah, after you write down your brain dump of everything that you heard in the speech, you can kind of use those same methods, techniques to really clean it up so that you can present it in speech style. Does that answer your question?
Well, it does, because one of the points that you said that I really like was, what is your message? And so if I'm giving somebody a speech evaluation and I come along and I say, oh, this was a speech that really inspired me, I heard you say, is that a good place to go in an evaluation? Is to tell them what you heard?
Yes, absolutely. Tell them what you heard, but very quickly spin it into what they could do. I believe, I'm not competing in evaluation right now, but I believe the evaluation is all about them. So, so say your reactions, this, oh my God, that one part, woo! But then quickly turn it into what they can do to amp that up a little more or keep it just how it is. And I hope that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
You are most welcome. Okay, any other questions before I shoot into fun activity?
Eric?
Yeah.
I didn't hear you say anything about recording. Do you practice recording yourself and self-evaluating a lot?
Not as much as I should. But please do. Yes, if you record yourself, here's one thing that I do is if I can't even read from that piece of paper because I have to go somewhere, I will voice record myself giving the speech and then have my earbuds in and listen to that I go. But I am imploring all of you, do what I don't do. If you can get your video recordings from, when you practice your speech, record yourself, watch it. You will learn so much by watching yourself. I have been doing more of that lately. Okay, last chance for question romance before we go into fun activity. All right, then let's move forward. Here's what we're gonna do. Let's do some practice. We talked about cleaning up speeches. All right, so I'm gonna give you the below snippet. This is now a snippet from your speech. Okay. And I want you we're going to do breakout rooms, I believe. Otherwise, we'll do it all together. But let's do breakout rooms. And I'm going to pop this snippet into the chat. And what I want you to do is get that down to the lowest word count possible. Now, to help you, I've given a precondition and a postcondition. Our precondition is we've just introduced the character Linda in your speech. And Linda is about to give you advice. That advice is the message of your speech. Okay, so that's the precondition. We've already accomplished that. Postcondition and our goal of the snippet. Linda has given her advice. Okay, so are there any questions? And I'm going to end the show real quick so I can copy this and pop it in the chat. Are there any questions as far as what we're trying to accomplish here? Now, before we get to questions, let me just reiterate, there are no wrong answers here. And actually, this is not a contest, but there is a goal. And the goal is get the snippet down to the lowest word count possible. And I'm thinking about giving 5 minutes to do that. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Eric, how many people do you want in the breakout rooms? Just 2 to 3?
Let's go. Yeah, we have a pretty, yeah, let's go 2 to 3.
Okay.
All right. And I just control C. And before we do those breakout rooms, let me make sure that I can pop this in the chat. All right. I will, as a matter of fact, I will even stop sharing. So I get, oh, look at all your lovely faces. Let me get those faces back. Let me pop up my chat. Let me make sure I can put this to everybody. Okay, it didn't copy the whole thing. So let me try that again, if I may. Okay, apparently there is a limit to how much text you can put in the chat. So let me try. So let me try. I'm going to leave the preconditions out. And let me see. All
You
right.
could split it into multiple pieces.
Yeah, you got it. Let me try that. It's an excellent idea. Control C. Let me see if I take off the preconditions. All right. So enter. So to everyone, there is your snippet. So go ahead, get into your groups. And again, your precondition is you've already introduced Linda. So she's about to give you advice. Here is the advice that she's giving you. Take this snippet and we'll give you, we'll just say 5 minutes to in your breakout rooms. Go ahead, you can choose a scribe. They can pop that up and go ahead and see what you can take away from that sentence to meet the post condition that she has given you that advice and you have introduced the message of your speech. Last chance for questions before breakout room. All right, let's kick off those breakout rooms and we'll have some fun with what we come back with. I want to thank you all so kindly for putting up with me on this. This is actually the very first time I've ever done this exercise with people on a Zoom call. So I'm learning as well. But let me ask this. Do we have, I heard a lot of good things, at least in the room that I was in. Would anyone like to pop what they came up with in the chat so we can take a look at it? And if you are working on popping something in the chat, just say, Eric, I'm working on it. Give me a little time.
Eric, we didn't get all the way through, but we
There we
just
go.
so you know, we didn't get all the way through.
No worries, no worries. All right, someone, room 5. Thank you for naming off your room as well. Let me share my screen first of all. Keep on popping stuff in the chat. We're going to spend another couple minutes looking at it. Remember, we're all winners here. So we're all learning from each other. All right, so let me share. Let me copy this. Copy. I shouldn't even have read off room 5. Now everybody's going to know who did this. But let me share my screen once again. Okay. So here is what we originally had. 152 words. I lied. I thought it was 100. Oh, that's because I added the word snippet. Okay, so it was 151 words, and room 5 came up with down to 21. Linda, my go-to person, can read me like a book. She said, don't waste your energy copying over people. Be yourself. Down to 21 words. But wait, hit that share button. Okay, there, now you can see it. All right, we have more stuff in the chat. Let me put that in. Oh, we got room 7. I won't be able to get to everybody, but room 7 put in. My good friend Linda leveled with me. Don't be anyone else. Be yourself. You rock at being yourself. Fantastic. All right, and one more. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, wow, look at this. So everyone did super fantastic. I'll pop in one more. that Steve put in there. Again, Linda is my person when I need advice. She says, just be yourself. Isn't that cutting out an awful lot? Yes, it is, but let's examine why. Okay, here's what we originally started with. So Linda looked me, matter of fact, hang on, let me go one more forward.
For what it's worth, room 7 couldn't figure out how she looked you in the eyes when you hung up the phone at the end.
Oh, right. See, but these are the things we find. When we write quickly and don't refine, these are the things we find. Okay, so let's look at how they got there. Now let's take the snippet. Remember, you've already introduced Linda, we said in the precondition. Therefore, we don't necessarily need to talk about Linda anymore. And as far as always the first person I run to when I think through something, you can actually, by the intensity of your voice, you could say something like, I got a problem, I'm calling Linda. And just by the way you say it, you can make it seem they already know that that's who you call when you have a problem. So look for ways that you can use your emotional impact to say things like this. Linda looked me in the eyes. Okay. Now looked at me in the eyes is fine. You know, if some people left that, that's super fantastic. Now, here's why I could easily see people saying the way she always looks at me when she knows I'm thinking too much. That strikes me as an aside. So you have something intense. Linda looked me in the eyes. And then you kind of back off to the side. The way she does when she knows, you put in, yeah, and she said, and right back to the intense part, you are distracting from the intensity of the moment by using asides. Try not to do that. There are places, if you find yourself using asides, try to put those details when you're introducing the character, if you need them at all, you know, keep them there so that in the moment when she's looking you in the eyes, you can put a pause there. Boom, she hits you with that advice. So again, try to spot where you're using asides. You'll only, now here's, I'm not going to go through every line because I'm probably eating up all the clock that I gained by going fast through part 1. Be careful. Notice how Linda basically says the same thing 3 or 4 times, just using different words. This is risky because remember, you want to refine your message down to maybe 1 sentence. So if you say your message 5, 6 ways during your speech, you might confuse people. Any one word can cause someone's brain to go off in a certain direction. So what people seemed to really zoom in on, where is it? I'm losing it. Just be yourself. So great job by everyone. Round of applause, virtual tacos and pizza for all of you, because a lot of people did seem to zoom on that. So again, I didn't get a chance to show everybody's thing, but remember, we only had 5 minutes and 2 minutes was probably eaten up just by choosing who a scribe was, figuring out collectively what we were trying to do. If you can take your word count down 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% in 3 to 5 minutes, imagine what you could do spending 10, 15 minutes every single day. So again, look at your stuff and yeah, get that word count down as much as you can. Is everybody ready to move on to part 2?
Mm-hmm.
All right, then let's do this. Level up your speech, part 2, make them feel it. This is my favorite part. And if I go long, I apologize. So let's start the slideshow and let's do it from the beginning. All right, level up. Now, remember, what we just talked about was a lot of, oh, sorry, Sherry, I should have made my word doc larger. But now now that we have our message crystal clear, our speech cleaned up, I want to introduce ways that we can make them feel it. And in this part is where I'm going to start introducing some things I've learned from past world champions. So be looking for that. First of all, pick a topic you're passionate about. I always debate whether I should keep this in there because it seems like such cookie cutter advice. All right. I think you've heard this a million times. They probably give you the same reason. If you don't care about your speech, why should anyone else care about your speech? But here's why I keep it, and here's what I'll add. If you take even half of the advice that I gave you in the part 1 of the speech, you are going to be putting a lot of work into your speech. So what is it that is going to keep you from becoming robotic and over rehearsed? It's your passion. Let your passion push you through. Okay, so that's, again, if you're giving a speech and I turn the volume all the way down, what I want to say to myself is, wow, I don't know what they're saying, but they mean it. That's what I want to say. So again, if you choose something you're passionate about, it's just going to be there. That fire is going to keep burning. Share a personal story. Another one that, I think we've all figured out. Have a personal story or an experience, because we are, big word, inundated, bombarded, with facts and information and opinions all day long. The last thing we need are things, extra information to throw on top of the pile. But a story? Woo! I will listen to a story any day of the week. Share a story, a personal story or experience. Now, here's the twist. Let the story drive the message. I think every single one of us in this room is guilty of writing a speech that says, here's my message, here's my example. Repeat the message, repeat the example. And we include the story, but we introduce our message first and then start telling the story to prove or be an example of that message. Try switching those around. Jump into your story. And then that way you engage your audience, you grab their attention. They want to know what's coming next. They, honestly, your message by itself, they may not understand or be able to relate to how that fits into their life. But if you can put them in your shoes and bam, then hit them with the message, it makes sense. They know when it comes into play. They can relate to it better. And it's just a better way of driving the message. Plus, think about this. Intro to a speech. This is my message. And you start listing off examples. How many ways can you start that speech? There's a lot. There's no shortage. I mean, there's a few different ways you can start a speech, but compare it to how many ways you can start a story. Answer any way you want. Okay, start the story and then let that story drive the message. So that way you make sure you are dropping that message at exactly the right time. So again, let that story drive the message. I'm starting to repeat myself. That probably means it's time to go to the next slide. All right. Now we are going to start introducing things I've learned from past world champions. We were in District 6. We were lucky enough to have Ryan Avery, the 2012 world champion of public speaking, come and give us a lecture, give us some tips about how to write a great speech. And his first bit of advice was, don't be the hero of your own story, your own speech. And listen, I don't think any of us want our speeches to be preachy, but we risk coming across that way when we make ourselves the hero of our own speech. Every single one of us has a message and wisdom that people need to hear, and we want to share that. But rather than going straight to how you saved the day, I want you to walk your audience back a little bit to the day where you learned that you were the one that needed saving. You were the one who was ignorant in that way, and now you know. So again, don't be the hero of your own speech. Even if you have to make a hero up, I recommend doing that, just so you are not the person saying, hey, look at how good I am at this. Look at how smart I am. No matter how good your logic is, if people perceive it to be coming down to them versus a human to human connection, they're probably not going to listen to you. So again, what you can do, however, because again, we want to share the wisdom and we want to share how the wisdom has really created a success story in our lives. Once you have showed them how you were ignorant and you learned, then you can tell them at the end how you became the hero, how the hero empowered you to save the day. So again, don't be the hero of your own speech. Now, this next one, I love this next one. I don't 100% agree with Ryan's tip here, but I think the wisdom behind why he says it is fascinating. Okay, here we go. Remember Linda from our snippet who was giving that great advice? None of you have ever met Linda. Linda is a fictional character, therefore you never saw her, but you did see her. You saw her in your head. Ryan's point is let the audience draw the pictures of your story in their mind. Let their brains do the work, and don't break that unless it's absolutely necessary to support your story and your message. Let me give you one more example. If I say the word basketball, if I'm telling you a story about a basketball, some of you are picturing a brand new basketball. Some of you are picturing an old basketball. Some of you are picturing a full-size basketball. Some of you might be picturing that little toy basketball that your kid brought home. Some orange basketball, the Harlem Globetrotters, red, white, and blue basketball. If it doesn't matter what that basketball looks like in my speech, I am not going to show you a basketball, because if I do show you a basketball, it's going to break whatever picture a lot of the people had in their head. If I went and got my basketball from the garage right now, I would show you a black basketball, which is none of the above that I just mentioned. So I will give my revised rendition of Ryan's tip, which is don't show your audience anything that they can't or won't picture themselves. Let their brains do the work. Let me do a disclaimer real quick. This advice and even my revised advice, you'll notice if you saw my last speech, I don't 100% follow either. And I think it might be because that's a little dated. Now that we are no longer giving speeches in person, at least for the time being, we are all looking for ways to make our speeches a bit more visually stimulating. So again, but I still stand on the logic to not show your audience anything that they can picture themselves. Again, try not to break the mental pictures that they do have. So drop the prop, maybe. Make sure your props are simple and effective. Okay, here's one of my favorite ones. We're going to go back to our script on this one. I've been lucky enough to do a little bit of work with 2013 World Champion of Public Speaking, Prez Vasilev. And the one thing he taught me how to do is to color code your script. And the reason why you color code your script is to signify, again, in your visual memory, when you need to change your demeanor. Just tripping over my words here. So when are you directly addressing the audience? Make that a certain color. In your story, when I do have dialogue, make that a certain color. Do you have jokes in there? All right, all right, so make a color for your jokes. Don't add too many colors. I don't want it to look like a pile of unblown up balloons, but make sure you color code your script, because again, when you're surrounded by people and the only way you can practice your speech is by reading off a piece of paper, you want to just build that habit and that know of when you need to change your demeanor a little bit. It's a visual cue to, okay, I'm talking directly to my audience right now. I better get in, lean in, and act like I mean it. Visual cues. It also helps you decide if your speech is balanced. Let me show you an example. When you color code your script, one thing you can do is zoom out from your speech. So far out that you cannot read the words, but you can, in fact, read the colors. All right. I'll give you my examples. Red is when I'm directly addressing the crowd. Blue is for dialogue. Remember when I gave you folks my wedding proposal speech and every single one of you said, we want to hear more from Jenny? Well, okay, how often am I showing Jenny perspective? I colored those green. And what it really allows me to do is zoom out and see how well balanced my speech is. How often, when and how often am I engaging the crowd? And I can see in this page down in the left here, I have a whole stretch where I am not engaging the crowd at all. That's something that I want to look at and see if I can, see what I can do there to make sure the crowd is feeling it. So color code your speech and use that as a way to, again, visual cue for when you change your demeanor, as well as zooming out and seeing how, how balanced your speech is. Look for alliterations. Okay, an alliteration is the occurrence of the same letter sound at the beginning or adjacent closely connected words. I only read that definition because my definition would be horrible. Prez Vasilev said something that was a real eye-opener for me. It's people don't hear words, they hear sounds. Why is this important? Again, everyone on this call wants to be eloquent. Well, okay, maybe most people on this call. I want to be eloquent too, but I think where we go wrong is how we try to do that. When a lot of people try to be eloquent, they reach for big, fancy words. And I think that's where we go wrong. When you're reaching for a word, try to reach for words that sound like the words around them, because that way you will come up with some natural alliterations. And it's important to have natural alliterations. I changed my speech title to My Perfect Plan. Both start with a P, because the reason why I want natural alliterations is because I don't want you filling up your speech with cliches. Live, laugh, love. Early bird gets the worm. Look for ways like all killer, no filler. Look for ways. If I look for ways you can make your words sound like each other. I'm losing my words here. But again, if you have a word, you're looking for a shorter way to say it, or you're looking for a better word to say it, don't reach for the biggest, fanciest word. Look for the word that sounds the most like the words around it. I'll give you a dead simple example. I told Jenny. Okay, yeah, that's one way to say it. It's nice and short. It's got a nice short word count like we just walked through. But I said to Jenny. Now I've got said and Jenny with that same sound. It rolls off smoother. So if you put alliterations throughout your speech, it's going to come across smoother. If you're using the same vowel sounds, the same consonant sounds, you're going to stumble over your words less because your mouth is already making that motion. So again, look for alliterations. Oh, I'm on my last slide. Good, because I think I'm almost out of time anyways. The last thing about your speech, as you're pouring over it again and again and again, note and pay attention to what all emotions you're showing in your speech. A lot of the winning speeches has a wide emotional range. When you're happy, hey, show you're happy. If you're victorious, make sure you're showing victory. Sadness, everything. Just make sure you have that wide emotional range. And what I'll try to wrap that up in is don't tell people your emotions. Don't say, I was excited. Act excited. Say your words excitedly, and your audience will know that you are excited. So make sure, while you don't have to tell them your emotions, make sure you're achieving that wide emotional range. Make sure your speech has highs. Make sure your speech has lows. And one more sub tip to put on that. Remember, sadness and anger, even sometimes, it's a very slow emotion. Fun, happy, that's a very fast emotion. So that leads you in a way where you can talk faster or talk slower. Now seems like a great time to wrap up my speech because I'm off script. So again, and I just realized I don't think I have a summary speech of all the points that I have in the second part of the speech. So now I think, but again, now I think I'm not even going to try to repeat them to you because we're so close to the end of the class. So that is my part 2 of how to level up your speech and with some of the tips. And I will send this deck out to every person that we have here, every person who's invited to this meeting. So let me open it up for Q&A. Any questions about anything that I walked through today?
Eric, I had a question come in the chat from Keith. Eric, based on these principles, how do we keep a regular cadence in our voice that entices the audience throughout?
A regular cadence in our voice that entices throughout. First of all, don't go monotone. Some of us, like I have a very hyper style. It's like I'm always caffeinated. But my biggest challenge is learning when to slow down. All right. I can be natural. I can be excited at a certain part, but at some points I have to slow it down. Now, entices the audience throughout. There's a certain other thing. I don't necessarily know. We want to have vocal variety. So we're going to go high, we're going to go low. We want that very varied. But what's really going to entice them is being genuine. If they think of anything that is either fake or stock advice, then they're not going to listen to that. So if you want to keep that regular cadence, if you want to entice the audience, be genuine with whatever you do. Now, as far as the cadence, don't make it as regular as you would think. There are certain parts of your speech that you can develop a rhythm for a certain section of your speech, but make sure you break that rhythm as soon as, because rhythms get old. Switch up your pitch, switch up your rhythm. And thank you for that question, Keith. Looks like Steve popped no fluff, just stuff in the chat. Great example of an alliteration. Carol, were you raising your hand?
Yes, I have a question. What advice would you give when you are a person filling a last minute speech slot? Somebody says, oh my gosh, can you fill in? And you don't have a good or you don't have any pocket speech. What advice would you give if you maybe have, a day or just a couple of hours to prepare?
Number one, always by the time you hit that stage, regardless of how much prep that you have, I want you to be you. Don't get up to that podium and try to think of your stuff. Here's the structure that I'm going to put on my speech on the spot. No, if you only have a day or so to prepare, then start with the basics. So again, what's your message? What do you want them to walk away with? Then 1, 2, 3 items that you can tell them, and then give them conclusion and punch it in your message. If this is what I want you to do. That's if you have minimal time to prepare. If you have 0 time to prepare, don't say no. Get up there, talk, do as much as you can off the cuff. But then if that's a subject you really care about, if that's a subject you really wish you would have had more time to prepare, take what you had and then start writing that speech as if you had time to prepare. So number one, forget everything else I said. The most important thing out of that is be you. Anytime you get on stage, even if you had months to prepare, get up there and be you. Make everything habit and just talk from the heart, let it flow. Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Rule of 3 is a beautiful thing, by the way. It's all over the place. 1, 2, 3, jokes, setup, punchline. So it's all over the place. Just give them 3 things. Doesn't matter how good they are. Get out there and do it. Deliver and get that feedback, and it's going to get better. Any other questions? I have a question from Cyrus in the chat. Yeah, good. Maybe end screen share. Why don't I do that? Okay, yeah. So anyways, yeah, so Cyrus's question, and I'll figure out how to end screen share while I'm answering that. Hello, Eric. Hello. What are the divisions that you color code in your speech structure? Again, I try to keep it simple. So I only start with 2. I think someone ended the screen share for me. Thank you. When I'm directly addressing the audience. That's the number 1. Because again, one goal of your speech is try to make people feel like you are talking directly to them. And if I never directly address the speech, the audience, never gonna get that. So I put a color on when I'm directly addressing the audience. The other one is dialogue. Because when you're dialogue, if I go right in my dialogue right now without changing my demeanor at all, do you really know I'm talking to someone else? No, I have to side to side or up, down, backward, forward. I have to change my demeanor somehow to let people know there's dialogue between people going on. So I color code for that. Those are the 2 that I start with. The others, I let the feedback that I get from my speeches drive that, much like we want to hear more from this particular person of your speech. Cyrus, I hope that helped. Another question from the mighty Jim Emery. When starting to develop your speech, do you start with your story and build the message from it, or choose your message and design the story around it? Usually it's the story. And honestly, that's just me. It can come from anywhere. I tend to start with stories that I know are entertaining. All right, so I have the story. Oh my God, I can't believe this happened to me. And then I will kind of pull, all right, what lesson was there? And here's why I start from the stories. It's like, I don't know who's here in software development, but you want to develop for what people need, for problems that they've had. Otherwise, you could be building something no one ever uses. The same goes with storytelling. If something I learned wasn't driven by a story, it might just be some kind of fictitious ideal or opinion that I've been brewing that's just a product of the echo chamber of my head and doesn't have any base in reality. So I do like to let the stories drive the message. Okay, this, even if I don't know how it impacted me, this was a major event in my life. Okay, type out this free write, type out the story first, and then see, okay, what message, why did it impact me so much? What message can I sum up that will make it as impactful on other people?
Of the World Master speeches, who's your favorite? Do you have like one in particular that you recommend listening to, watching?
We're okay, of world championship speeches, or just any world known speech?
The World Championship in particular.
Oh wow, I wasn't expecting this one. The speech that I think I like the most. Again, check out Ryan Avery's speech. Check out Ryan Avery's speech from 2012. And the reason why is because I think I relate most to Ryan Avery. He's got that natural style. He's very playful in the way that he delivers his content. So I think I connect with him the most, but there's a ton of great speeches out there. Prez Vasilev, who I'm working through now, watch his speech. He introduces sound effects. And if you want to look for how to lower your word count, he's an excellent resource, because I think of all the champions, I think he had the lowest word count of his speeches. So a great resource there. Any other questions? Otherwise, if folks don't mind me taking up 2 more minutes, if there's no further questions, I have a little bit of bonus material for you. Okay, Rochelle's clapping her hands. Okay, hearing no other questions, let me end on this. And I'm looking for a blank piece of paper, and I'm already giving my punchline. You all are going, bonus, woo! Every single one of you, when refining your speech, are going to hit a wall. As in, you just can't find any other way to improve your speech. Why is this? Number one, remember, the more we polish something, the more we fall in love with it. The more we fall in love with it, the less willing we are to change anything. Reason number two, remember, the more you revise and cut down your word count and then build it back up, you are introducing a lot of rules. Anything I add to this revised speech has to follow all these predetermined rules. That's why we hit the wall. So the best, and I'll go right back to my Jenny example. People said, we want to hear more from Jenny. I'm like, well, the story is from my viewpoint. So it's hard. I couldn't find a way to introduce Jenny's perspective. So to avoid breaking hearts, to avoid breaking rules, start with, I know this isn't blank, start with a blank piece of paper. Take your revised speech, multiple pages, put it to the side. That's still good. We're still going to go with that, but put it to the side. Grab a blank piece of paper and start free writing. How you free write, it completely depends on what you want to do. If you think, I don't have enough jokes in this, okay, rewrite your speech from a humorous angle. Because people wanted more of Jenny in the speech that I'm competing with now, I had to write the entire story from her perspective. Then, when you're writing on a blank piece of paper, free writing, don't think about structure, don't think about anything, just free write. You're not breaking any hearts. You have no rules to go by. Then when you're done, you run out of options there, take your revised speech, grab what your free writing that you just did, and then is there anything from what you just wrote that makes its way into the new? You'll be amazed at what you find. So that, my friends, is one way to break through the wall when you don't think your speech can be improved any further. Okay, friends, I think we're 12 minutes over time. I get long-winded.
Okay.
So yes, go ahead. All right. Well, yes, again, thank you so much for having me. Again, I hope that you got something that's going to help you build your material. I want you leaving people like you changed their lives, or I want you to be able to package your content and sell even. Or again, if you want those kind of trophies, again, I hope you're filling up your bookshelves with them, through not only my advice, get lots of advice from everybody you possibly can. That's all for me. I'll shut it down because I'll keep you here for another half hour if I keep going. Thank you all so much.